far away.
We are live now. Good evening, everyone. We are back with very interesting topic, and today we have Raj Mariwala with us. She's very good friend of mine, and she's been working as a canine trainer and behaviorist for a long time. She's also a director of Mariwala Health Initiatives. She will give more details about her work activity in the field of mental health care. Over to you, Rajvi.
Thanks, Meera. I'm really glad to be here today, and even more so to be on here with a very dear friend and colleague, Meera. As she said, I have trained dogs, and I'm also feline behaviorist. And the other part of my job, or I should say, my second job, is in mental health. And Mariwala Health Initiative works on multiple mental health programs across the country in both urban India and rural India using a rights based approach. And especially focusing on what we call marginalized populations or vulnerable populations. So that's a little
Okay.
bit about my work, but dog training is my first love.
Okay. Uh, so I guess people are still joining. We have nearly 50 people online. So let's start with our very interesting topic of companion animals and mental health care. So we all know over the years, animal human animal relationship is always strong, and not just with dogs, but we have cattles, we have sheep, we have goats, we have cats also.
Horses.
So yeah, so all these domestic animals have been close part of human life on day-to-day basis for over the last many years. Since the time the pet industry started or pet dog concept started, the definitions have changed. Like every generation by generation, things are changing. So, how do you see all these things when it comes to human-animal relationship context?
So I think first I have to say that in terms of dogs, dogs have had the longest history of human domestication of any animal by thousands of years. There are things up in caves, there are things up in ancient art. It's pretty amazing. And as Meera, as you said, that there are many animals that are domesticated and that have relationships with humans: dogs, cats, horses, guinea pigs, sheep, goat, cows. But dogs and humans together were the ones that made the transition from what we call the nomadic hunter gatherer phase. That is when humans were roaming around, maybe hunting to survive, gathering food and fruit to survive, all the way to when we settled down with agriculture and farming, when the ice moved away, the ice age stopped. So, that says a
Mm-hmm.
few important things about dogs versus the other animals. We have relationships with all of them.
Yeah.
But the movement of this from living with dogs, living with humans as they were hunting, gathering, to then living in farms, that shows that dogs have a very broad range of abilities. And this
Mm-hmm.
broad range means that they have adapted really well. They have very good
Mm-hmm.
adaptation skills to evolution over millennia, over thousands of years. And in the past few centuries, it's not just been physically how they're adaptable, right? Yes, they have been
Mm-hmm.
physically adaptable. Yes, you see such a wide variation in dogs. You see a dog that is 70 kgs, you'll see a dog that is 3 kgs.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that they have played so many important roles in humans' lives, all the way
Yeah.
to family members. So they're extremely adaptable.
Uh-huh.
And we know that we've used them for hunting, agriculture, protection. Dogs have been used in wars. Dogs are still used as a food or a fur source for warmth. We know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everyone has seen dogs sledding in
Yeah.
cold climates. That's dogs using for transport. Dogs are used for police work. They are used in search and rescue work, but they're also used very extensively in the health sector, right? They're used for
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. They're used for cancer. They're used for seizure detection. More
Yeah, yeah.
recently, it may interest everyone to know that dogs are also being used and tested to figure out whether they can test for COVID positivity.
Yes, yes.
And the trials on that have been very positive up to now. Dogs are
Yeah.
also used as assistance dogs to assist persons with disabilities, as
Mm-hmm.
guide dogs for people who are blind, as well as family pets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this tells us that dogs depend on humans. They have a very close relationship with humans. Whether they simply actually remove our waste by feeding on the kachra that we leave here and there, which a lot of
Yeah.
stray dogs do, or more directly when they live as pets or as working animals. Now,
Yeah.
this can be extremely challenging and confusing because, in essence, the dog is a different species living in a world that is completely structured by humans, and that
Yeah.
involves a lot of creativity, intelligence, work, and generosity on the part of the dog as well. And in many
Mm-hmm.
cases that Meera and I see in our work, because dogs do so many things and because they mean such a variety of things to humans, it may cause
Yeah.
difficulties in the relationships and confusions in the relationships which we have with dogs, which may then
Yeah.
lead to behavior issues.
Yeah. Also, I feel that all these therapy dog or companion dog or a pet dog, these are sophisticated words or sophisticated identity of the dog, but the dog has been paying his duties towards humans and living very closely with humans, so from a very old time, like
Very old time.
yeah. So
And in
yeah, go
fact,
ahead.
the dog is technically the most successful species on earth because we have come the closest to human numbers. And it's so
Yeah.
successful possibly because it knows how to exchange communication with humans, it knows how to interact with humans, and it knows how to emotionally engage with humans. Because
Yes.
you brought up history, and today we are talking about therapy dogs. The ancient Greeks in
Mm-hmm.
500 BC, they kept dogs in what they called their healing temples. And not
Mm-hmm.
just dogs, actually. They also said that horseback riding was very good for people who, at that time, they called suffering from melancholy. Now,
Mm-hmm.
melancholy is what we would understand today as depression, and they were
Oh.
also used dogs were used to lift the spirits of people who were terminally ill. I mean, this is incredibly advanced. Imagine in ancient Greece, dogs were already being used.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to look at more recent history, dogs were used in a psychiatric hospital for the first time in 1796. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine that. And even in the
Yeah.
history of nursing, one of the most famous nurses in worldwide history, Florence Nightingale, also spoke about the importance of using dogs or companion animals in health and in healing. So it's very
Wow.
exciting. Yeah.
Okay. So since we have started talking about all therapy dogs. So let's get on to this topic straight away. What
Sure.
is the real definition of therapy dog when you use this term? What is a therapy animal
Right.
scientifically?
Yes. So, scientifically, actually, this definition is extremely precise. Now, what it
Mm-hmm.
is that a therapy animal is an animal that is used in types of animal assisted interventions. Now, the intervention is animal assisted, in which there is a goal directed intervention or therapy
Mm-hmm.
for which an animal that meets certain specific criteria as well as training is part of a healthcare process. Now,
Mm-hmm.
animal assisted therapy is provided in a variety of settings. It may be group or individual in nature, but
Mm-hmm.
essentially, it says that the animal is used, a trained, accredited animal is incorporated as an integral part of some healthcare process or treatment process. This
Okay,
means
so
that, huh,
let me just break it down so that our viewers can also connect with
correct,
the thing. So
correct,
me being a pet owner, I have my
huh,
own dogs, and
yes,
we often
yes,
we call our dogs that okay, my dogs are as good as a therapy dogs for me personally.
yes,
I don't
yes,
know how they will behave with other people, and whether they will support emotionally with the same intensity, with the same quality of emotions. So
correct.
how do you differentiate between a pet pet dog who acts like a therapy dog to the family, and a well or a proven therapy dog who has gone under the training process. So what is the difference? So then our viewers and the pet owners or and also the pet professionals can understand the
Yes,
difference.
yes. So that's an excellent example. Thank you, Meera. So in a personal setting, my pet may give me great support, may help me through a lot. We know that in lockdown, people have already been talking about the fact that their pet is a source of great joy, is a sort of comfort, is a source of support. Now, when we talk in a
Mm-hmm.
personal context, if your pet is
Mm-hmm.
supportive or if you feel that your pet is like therapy for you, yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fabulous. You are absolutely right. Your pet is one of the coping mechanisms or one of your support structures. But is it a
Mm-hmm.
therapy animal? No. Can it go out and do therapy work with other people? No, it cannot. Because your
Mm-hmm.
pet is your own coping mechanism, is your own support structure. Similarly,
Yeah.
to as if I have a best friend and I call her up every day, I can say it is like therapy for me to talk to her. But can she be a
Yeah.
therapist? No, she cannot.
No.
So
Yeah.
then, what does a professional therapy dog look like? It means that
Uh-huh.
that dog has been tested and trained extensively. It means that
Uh-huh.
that dog works in a particular setting with not
Mm-hmm.
just a trained handler, but also a trained healthcare professional,
Mm-hmm.
because it is one setting, it is one session which has very predefined goals.
Mm-hmm.
The session is documented and evaluated after the session is over, and then
Yeah.
after that the dog is also evaluated for any stress. So this
Uh-huh.
means that the dog works alongside humans who know how to handle the dog appropriately, as well as the professionals who work with the client that we are serving. So now, if I have to give you some examples, there are
Mm-hmm.
dogs in a therapy session. A therapy dog can help with walking, that is physical therapy. A dog can help to provide motivation and decrease stress in times of, say, for example, if there is a natural disaster. We know that
Mm-hmm.
in shootings in the US, mass murderers, they have been used
Yeah.
as comfort animals. So those are the situations in which the dog can provide. But the dog
Mm-hmm.
is always a trained dog, is always accompanied by a
Uh-huh.
handler, and there is always a healthcare professional who knows how to assess the needs of the human client. So
Okay, so
that is the
it's always,
situation.
always a, yeah, so it's always a teamwork between a health professional, a dog handler who is qualified to handle a therapy dog or a
Yes,
service dog, and then
yes,
the dog and the service receiver. So it's a
yes.
teamwork. So any
And
factor or any key shouldn't go missing in
no,
that. All
and
right,
more
all right.
importantly, it's not a standalone therapy. This is
Uh-huh.
possibly the most important thing that people should remember. It
Uh-huh.
does not mean that, oh, X person has depression, that person has to go and see a therapy dog. No, it is part of a range of healthcare activities. It will always be part of a range. It can never substitute for a full healthcare activity.
Okay, so we have our first live question by Shweta Mallapur. She says, with humans living extremely stressful lifestyle and most importantly, many suffering from mental disorders such as anxiety disorders or depression, is there a possibility for their pets to mirror certain disorders? For example, can a pet mirror anxiousness or fear because his human has the same? If yes, what are the options we can look at to help both the humans and his pet? That's an
Okay.
very interesting and very intensive question. And I believe that a lot of people might be going through the similar phase during this lockdown. So over to you.
Absolutely, absolutely excellent question. And your many people do live with anxiety disorders and depression. I will first off myself say that I myself live with an anxiety disorder, so I know what you're talking about firsthand. Uh,
Mhm.
and the answer is yes. Your pet can pick up your anxiety. Your pet can pick up on what you're feeling right now. And this, when we talk of mental health, I want to say this, that mental health is a spectrum. And even though we may not suffer from anxiety or depression, at all points in our life, we may need some mental health support. So I'll use a particular case right now, maybe two examples I'll use to illustrate. Right now, I'm
Mhm.
working with a family who had two dogs. They lost, one of their dogs died in lockdown, and
Uh-huh.
the family is extremely sad and suffering, and the dog is also sad and suffering. Now the dog is picking up the family's emotions. So my program for the dog involves doing lots of different things and making the family aware that certain actions or certain emotions of theirs are affecting their pet. So it's not necessarily that only if you live with a mental health condition will it affect your pet. Even if you are undergoing a lot of strain, even if you are undergoing maybe arguments or quarreling at home with family members, all of this can affect your dog. So it's
Mhm.
the first step is very good, is to be aware that it may affect your dog. Then what do you do about it is the other question. Now it may be different for different disorders, but for anxiety I will say part of it involves some self work and knowing what triggers your anxiety, because when that happens you can either remove yourself from the situation, remove the dog from the situation, or
Mhm.
you can figure out, say for example, if you know that you're going to get anxious to take your dog to the vet, ensure that another family member does. If you know that you're
Mhm.
going to get anxious when your dog gets anxious due to thunderstorms, and I have many clients like those, I will prep them, figure out a way to make the client prepared and figure out a way to make the dog prepared. So the key is
Yeah.
to know your own triggers and know that
Yeah.
your dog is going to be affected, and come up with a written plan for each and every situation which triggers you, because
Yes.
that is unavoidable. So you need to figure
Yeah.
out what triggers you and come up with a plan. So for example, if you know you live with depression and on a morning you are absolutely unable to get out of bed and take your dog for a walk, keep a list of numbers ready that you can call trusted friends or
Mhm.
family saying, hey, I just cannot do it today. This is what we've discussed. You said that you would help me. Can
Mhm.
you please come and help me with the dog?
Okay, so moving ahead with our topic, and we also have live questions coming. These questions have we have already included in our questionnaire thing. So just wait till Rajbi answers all these questions. So when we talk about therapy dog or service dog, is there any breed specific work profile? So are there any particular breed that has been largely used in particular
Yes,
way?
yes. There are
Yeah.
certain breeds that are most commonly used for this type of work, and
Mm-hmm.
they are what we would call in the retriever category. You can say golden retriever, Labrador retriever, but
Mm-hmm.
also some other breeds like Irish setter, collies,
Mm-hmm.
standard poodles, certain types of
Mm-hmm.
spaniels. So these breeds are chosen because of their hereditary breed traits. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the clue is in the name, retriever.
Yeah.
They can fetch things. Fetching is actually what the concept of sharing is. The dog is sharing
Yeah.
something with you. It shows cooperation. It shows that the dog wants to interact with you.
True.
So that's why these breeds are more often chosen. Mixed breeds have also been used. I'm saying that right now because I'm sure people are going to ask this question: can mixed breeds be used? Can
Yeah.
different types of Indian breeds be used? Lots of
Yeah.
different breeds have been used, but certain breeds are predisposed to doing this job better, and that would be your retrievers, your setters, collies,
Mm-hmm.
poodles, because you have to look
Yeah.
at the hereditary breed traits of the dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in talking in terms of Indian scenario, we have question from AK Dave. What is the
Mhm.
situation of pet assisted therapy and therapy animals in India? Is this a field that is well researched in Indian context?
Okay, that's uh, excellent question. I will have to say that there is work being done on this in India.
Yeah.
There are dogs who have gone to school for school visits to teach children about kindness, about interacting with dogs. There are dogs
Mm-hmm.
who are used for children who are on the autistic spectrum. dogs
Mm-hmm.
used for developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities. Dogs
Mm-hmm.
have in India have also worked with groups of adults who
Mm-hmm.
live with dementia, schizophrenia. Now, all of these have
Do you
been
have such backup? Do you have such doggy volunteers who
yes,
help you in your health sessions? Would you
yes,
like to
absolutely.
give us some examples so then our viewers can connect with the
Sure,
concept also?
sure. Yes. So, first off, I'll talk about possibly the most popular dog that I've had the privilege to work with, dog and owner team, which is Leo the Golden Retriever
Oh,
and
that's a
his human, Parul
true
Dalal.
sweetheart.
So,
Yeah, true sweetheart.
yes,
Both of them are true
amazing.
sweetheart.
They
Yeah.
are both absolutely amazing, Leo Dalal and Parul Dalal. And if
In
you
fact,
go to use,
Parul is a classic and a very ideal example how the pet owners are so proactive in using their dogs intelligence and how they love to work with the dog. I haven't seen Parul sitting quietly in her house and enjoying holidays. I have always
never.
seen her doing something or the other around Leo, and he also loves to please her, being a
Absolutely.
retriever. Yeah,
Absolutely. And, luckily for both of them, they love what they're doing. But more importantly, in terms of therapy animals, Parul figured out very fast what sort of work makes Leo the happiest. And Leo
yeah.
loves working with kids. Leo may not do so well sitting with one client working in a session when a client has depression or anxiety. So that
Uh-huh.
actually talks about temperament of therapy dogs. There are actually a
Mhm.
range of temperaments. So a dog like Leo, who is very interactive, loves being with people, loves being with kids, loves showing off all of his tricks and skills. And believe me, his owner is extremely committed and has taught him a lot. And you will see that
Mhm.
on their Instagram profile. But that can be contrasted with, for example, my own dog Nimbu, who Meera knows very well because he was almost a gift from her to me. He spent 2 months at her kennel and she took
And
care.
I would say that he's a trauma survivor. He's a depression survivor also, because we have
Yes,
seen him how depressed he used to be and how much time he took just to wag his tail or just to come out of his kennel and choose to sit under the sun or sit under that mango tree, and a little bit of improvement, and we used to get so happy that okay, now he's coming out of his shell finally.
yes, yes. Absolutely.
So.
So, and just to talk about Nimbu sits in on one-on-one sessions with a therapist who has been trained to handle him when she is seeing clients who live with depression or anxiety. And
Mhm.
his role is to sit quietly by their side on a cushion and allow the handling, allow the touching. He's not allowed to be pushy. He's not allowed to jump on them. No, nothing. That's his role. And what it does is
Mhm.
it helps them talk. Sometimes clients like to talk to the dog rather than the therapist. It is easier sometimes to share very hard things with animals,
Mhm.
as a lot of you may have experienced.
Okay.
So that is
Okay.
Nimbu. So those are different types. Yes.
Okay. So since you are certified the therapy dog trainer, what do you believe of at what age one should start training their puppy if they want to go train their dog for therapy work, and if they have an adult dog which they want to become a therapy dog, because we as a professionals also we see a lot of people are too much enthusiastic about I want to make my dog a therapy dog. So can you put some light on both the aspects?
Yes. So there are two parts to this. One is temperament, the other is training, right? So now, if we look
Mm-hmm.
at just training, if you have a puppy and you want that puppy to become a therapy dog, you have to start training from the get go. That doesn't mean that your puppy at the age of 4 months is going to be a therapy dog, nor is it going to be
Mm-hmm.
a therapy dog at the age of 8 months. I would say a bare minimum would be a year, but essentially, the dog needs to go very extensive training and socialization
Mm-hmm.
in order to do this work. Now, this word
Mm-hmm.
socialization, I'm going to say that Meera should have a separate 1 hour session just to discuss what that means. But we'll leave
Yes.
that aside for now.
Yeah.
But more importantly, in terms of age, There are many reasons
Uh-huh.
why puppies should not be doing this work, and it takes a slightly older dog. This sort
Uh-huh.
of work is a strain on the dog, physically,
Yeah.
emotionally, and mentally. It is work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, when I say physical strain, I really honestly do mean physical strain. Abroad, dogs do have to pass health checks, get x rays to ensure that they are fit enough to do this work, because it would be unfair to put a dog who has joint issues to do this sort of work. This means that, for
Mm-hmm.
example, a dog needs to be checked for health issues, joint issues, and you will not be able to check a young growing puppy when the
Yeah.
bones are still growing. So it's
Yeah.
very important that the dog continue to be trained as a pup and then be
Yeah.
tested at a variety of intervals so that you can do some course correction maybe. And then a little later on, minimum of 1 year, I would say, I would be more
Yeah.
comfortable even after that,
Yeah.
for a puppy. And as for an adult dog, as we spoke about Nimbu, and I got
Uh-huh.
my gift from Meera, it was only after about a year or so that we were able to put him into a session. He was
Mm-hmm.
about, we imagine he was about 2.5 when he came into our
Yeah.
lives. Nimbu is a
Yeah.
Mudhol hound, sorry. Um,
Yeah.
but again,
Indian
he
breed.
was used, yes, Indian breed, absolutely. But he
Yeah.
was used because his temperament matched to do this sort of work.
Mm-hmm. We can again put it in very simple words. Even if you want to make to make your kids a doctor or engineer or a lawyer, they have to. Every kid has to go for preschooling and kindergarten, and then they have to go primary schools, and then there is a high school, and then after that they start taking their specialized subjects. So
Yes,
even if you want to make your dog a therapy dog, in the adult age, the basic training should start right from puppy age. So then at least by age of 8 months or 9 months, you will get to know what is his behavior profile
yes,
building. Because
yes.
for any purpose, you have to actually build a dog. You can't just say that, okay, he wags his tail and he loves meeting people. That doesn't come under therapy
No,
work for sure. Yeah. So
no,
we have
not at
question.
all.
Yeah. So we have question from Hitesh. He is asking, is there any organization in India that certifies and checks the dog being a therapy dog?
Unfortunately, there is no certification organization in India, to the best of my knowledge. And this could be for a
Mm-hmm.
variety of reasons. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Both the animal assistance field in India as well as the mental health field in India are, I would say, still growing, especially
Mm-hmm.
mental health. A lot of mental health professionals are not, I would say, clued in to what animal assisted
Mm-hmm.
therapy is. I
Yeah.
personally run workshops for mental health professionals so that they learn how to use
Mm-hmm.
it in their
Yeah.
method. So, first, the demand has to come.
Okay, so since you mentioned about that you have to start training a dog, because now over the past couple of live sessions on various platform, people have been talking about that the dog has to go under training, dog has to go under training. So when we talk about training, what type of training you do? What is the training format that the therapy dog has to go? Because therapy dog is a stand is a one word, but there are different categories when it comes to therapy dog or a service dog. Because police cannot perform doctor's job, doctor cannot perform police job. So
Yes.
can you talk more about how the training is different for each therapy work?
Okay, so this is a very big question because there are different types of therapy work. Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe I will go into the different types of therapy work first, or
Yeah.
maybe I'll give you a rough idea on the training first. So,
Yeah.
as I was telling earlier, that the training involves early on, if possible, a high level of basic reward based training and extensive socialization, which
Mm-hmm.
includes public spaces, many different types of people, learning to
Mm-hmm.
ignore other animals. And I say this especially for everyone who says socialization means my dog has to be friends with other dogs.
Yeah.
um, but also very extensive handling, which means that people should be able to touch the dogs, as well as stressful situations.
I would like to
So,
interrupt you just for a second when you say that you have to the dog has to learn to ignore the dog, and it is also necessary for the citizens or the human beings to leave the dog alone if it's a service dog, because we have seen so many videos on Facebook that people feel offended when the owners or when the handler says that please do not touch my dog, he's on job or he's working.
yes,
So
yes.
what do you mean by that? That people should not take it as an offense when someone stops that, okay, don't disturb my dog, he's on a work.
It's extremely important to respect a dog's work, especially when a dog is doing something such as assistance work, guide dog
Yeah.
work, as a mobility. Now, what do I mean? Guide dog work is a dog who helps a blind person navigate. Assistance or mobility dogs are help persons who are in wheelchairs or who need mobility devices. Or, for example, a psychiatric service dog, which is a dog who is specially trained and lives with one person who may suffer from PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks. So, that dog's sole focus is to keep the human safe and healthy. That is a very important job. If you
Yeah.
distract the dog from doing that job, you are putting the dog in danger, you are putting the human in danger.
Mm-hmm.
So, similarly, you would see in airports, they're very strict about it, and people hopefully, do not break these rules where security forces are concerned, otherwise, you'll be put in the slammer. So, let's treat
Mm-hmm.
the needs of persons with mental health issues and disabilities with as much respect.
Yeah, we have question coming in from Mona Lisa Banerjee. She's asking, while we are focusing on therapy dogs, can we also speak about positive impact of owning pets for people suffering from any kind of mental health issues?
This is again great question. Also, because I'm going to complicate this one a little bit. Uh, I think personally
Yeah,
for
because we
me.
have that question. We have the similar question lined
Okay.
up about brief information about mental health conditions,
Hmm,
and
hmm,
do you
hmm.
advise having a pet for such
Yes.
families or for such individuals?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think the power of pets, the power of dogs, they understand when we point, they know how to make eye contact, they see us smile, they know what it means. That is absolutely brilliant. There are so many hard conversations that you may be able to have with your dog that you're unable to have with a human. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Dogs communicate in a way that humans can't. Dogs
Mm-hmm.
support in a way that possibly that we can't. So there are some very very positive things about having pets or having a dog as part of your family,
Mm-hmm.
but there are also some challenges that we have to be aware of. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
One is it's not as easy to say that I live with a mental health condition, let me get a dog and it's going to be a great improvement for me. No,
Yeah.
not necessarily. Dogs can also cause huge spikes in anxiety, actually, if you don't know how to take care of the dog. If the dog has a behavior issue, it can lead to you yourself having anxiety. If you don't
Yeah.
know about the future of maybe a stray dog that you feed, that's cause
Yeah.
for anxiety as well, or cause for other mental health issues. So it's very important to remember that we can't treat it as a one size fits all. So tomorrow, if
Mm-hmm.
someone tells you, and there are many people who give this well-meaning advice to individuals or to parents of kids, saying that get a dog, it will help the child. For something as simple as, I remember about 4 to 5 years ago, there was a shy child who had just shifted cities and they had moved to Bombay. And they were told, get a dog, it will help your child adjust, it will help her make friends. They went ahead and
Mm-hmm.
adopted a puppy. And I walked into a home with five people standing on their sofas and screaming because all of them were scared of a tiny 2 month old 3 kilo puppy.
Oh. Oh.
And it was an extremely challenging and heartbreaking case because, in the end, they could not deal with the puppy's needs. They did not have the time to toilet train. It was stressing them out. The parents were still scared of the dog. They did not even have the
Mm-hmm.
time to train, and the puppy was given away. The thing
Mm-hmm.
is that there are certain types of dogs. How may this have changed if they had adopted the right type of dog? If they had adopted a dog like Nimbu, for example, none of that would have
Mm-hmm.
been necessary. If they had adopted a senior dog, that would not have been necessary. So it's important to remember that while dogs can be an immensely supportive mechanism or immense support function in a person's life, it is always the right type of dog. You have to look for a
Yeah.
suitable fit. It is not a
Yeah.
one size fits all.
Yeah. Can you give us more information about mental health conditions? What are different mental health conditions? How to address, how to identify and how to address those things? Because nowadays now people have started saying that no, I think I need to speak to doctor. I think I need to speak to my counselor. At
Yeah,
least now we are addressing and we are accepting that okay, something is going wrong. But
yes.
initially in the old days, it was a little shameful that okay, you need a counselor, you need a psychiatrist. I mean, then you're a crackpot.
Yes,
So
yes. Yes. So I would say that still exists today, but just to go into a definition, now mental health
yeah,
is a spectrum. And what we mean
yeah.
by that, it is ranges from well-being, everything is okay, to what we would call a common mental health issue, which is what we have been talking about largely, such as anxiety or
Mm-hmm.
depression, or a
Mm-hmm.
severe mental health issue, which then are things like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. Now, what does this
Mm-hmm.
include? If I have to just talk about mental health, it includes emotional health, it includes
Uh-huh.
psychological health, and it includes social well being.
Social health.
Okay,
Yeah.
these are the three
True.
things, which means that emotionally, I have to feel stable and okay, psychologically, I have to feel it, and I have to have enough networks and connections socially. Mental health is important and affects you at every stage of life, all the way from childhood through adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health can deeply affect daily life, relationships, as well as physical health too. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to talk about mental health as a whole, see, the thing is that what people tend to forget is that all of us have mental health. Today or the other day or maybe 10 days ago, if you woke up feeling worried about COVID, if you felt stressed due to your employment situation, if you have tension around whether someone around you is going to get COVID or not, if you felt anxiety about it, if you felt
Yeah.
sad, this is all mental health. Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of us today, because of COVID, because of lockdown, are going through this, are experiencing this. So I would say
Yeah.
distress. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing uncommon about it. Everyone has it. And there are a range of conditions, as I was talking about. Now, not
Yeah.
necessarily everyone has those conditions. There are some people who then go to a counselor or a therapist and who are then
Yeah.
diagnosed with these solutions. And then there's a range of treatments. It
Yeah.
can be just talk therapy, which is sitting across and talking to a counselor. It
Mm-hmm.
can be medication. It can also be different types of therapy. And now this is where animals would come in. There is art therapy, there is dance therapy,
Yeah.
there is, of course, animal based therapy, there is performance therapies. A lot of the times people talk about the role of exercise in good
Yeah.
mental health. So, if I have to
Yeah.
say, in terms of mental health issues, it's always important to first reach out maybe to a
Mm-hmm.
professional. If you feel like your worry, your stress, your distresses have become
Mm-hmm.
unmanageable and chronic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they are, or whether they need a diagnosis or a professional, then depends on the first point of contact, which would be your counselor or therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so,
So
huh,
yeah, so
ask,
when
ask.
do you suggest to bring the therapy dog in? Because sometimes the not all professionals, but sometimes it's the family doctor also who suggest for this problem, why don't you get a dog for your kid? Why don't you get a cat for your kid? Why don't you get a pet for your kid? So then, or sometimes it's not a kid also. Sometimes it's an adult. Sometimes a
Yes.
wife would gift. a pet to her husband because he has some mental conditions, and she believes that by gifting a pet, my husband may, or the spouse may improve. So how do
Correct.
you suggest when it comes to when we talk about mental health care versus companion pet? When do these pets or a therapy session should come in?
So the companion animal, who is a
Mm-hmm.
regular pet, plays the role of a family member. Now, how
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling anxious, uh, and you have a family member, you would reach out to them and say, hopefully, you'll reach out to them and say, I'm not feeling okay, or this is really
Yeah.
bothering me.
Yeah.
The pet will play that role in the same way as a family member would. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if a professional or if someone is saying that I want a dog in my life as a therapy dog,
Mm-hmm.
first I would actually ask the healthcare professional what goals they intend to accomplish by having the dog in that
Yeah.
person's life. Now, for example, and I've done this with clients, if you live with depression and it is hard for you to get out of bed in the morning and you know that that's one of the stumbling blocks, your dog can be trained to
Little
move your covers off.
whose connection is bad. Can you
Okay.
guys ping once if you can hear me or if you can hear Rajvi? I
Uh,
don't
I can hear you. Um,
understand.
I
I think
hopefully
it's
others can hear you.
okay. Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So, as I was saying, the first thing is to ask what goals are for this dog's
Mm-hmm.
existence or need for this type of therapy dog in your life. And if I have to use one
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
working with someone who lived with depression. Now, if one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest hurdles to that person living their daily life is getting out of bed, that's the hardest thing for them to do in their daily life. How would a
Mm-hmm.
dog play a role? It would have to be
Yeah.
a calm, confident, happy dog who in the mornings would first learn to nudge the person with the cold nose. Then, if that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work, to remove the blanket from the person. And number three,
Yeah.
to actually cuddle up with the person. So that dog is
Yeah.
playing a role in that person's life.
Yeah.
If that person finds it maybe they don't want to go for a walk on their own because their thoughts wander and then they slip into thinking about all the
Yeah.
things that have gone wrong in their life. The dog
Yeah.
plays the role of keeping that person focused in the here and
Yeah.
now and doing their daily tasks, going for a
Yeah.
walk, helping to keep a
Yeah.
routine. So
Yeah.
in that case, I'll always say that it's very important, and I do this with anyone who comes to me with this request. I will first talk to the professional who has recommended that they get a dog, ask in what senses, what are the goals for this dog to accomplish in partnership with this person, and on the
Yeah.
basis of that, one can assess further and talk to
Yeah.
the person and the family and see whether they are appropriate for a dog, because you
Yes.
cannot just put a dog in a situation where maybe a person is I don't know, prone, if a child has
Yeah.
issues and is prone to
Yeah.
kicking dogs, I cannot put a dog in that situation. I may
Yeah.
suggest another situation like a one-on-one session in a therapy session with a dog, but not
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, as a trainers and behaviorists, we often hear a statement saying by pet professionals also and by pet owners also that whenever I feel sad, I cuddle my dog. Whenever I feel sad, it's my dog is my biggest therapy. Sometimes we overburden our dogs by rubbing our emotions also. And I would like to give an example. I'm the owner of three beautiful dogs with beautiful temperament. I also have my own kennel where multiple dogs are there, but still I could not find my peace of mind because of overly stress workload. And somehow I found out my interest and my therapy in the colors, and I started going to some painting classes. And I will show you one painting just behind me, and that painting I made into that class when I was going through a very difficult time and I wanted that break very badly. So that's the painting that I made it when I was severely stressed out. And I remember Rajvi saying that please don't say And not just me, but to all our fraternity, she addressed that statement that please don't say that your dogs are your biggest therapy, or when we train the dogs, that is our part of therapy and we feel happy. If you feel exhausted, if you feel anxious, if you feel stressed out, reach out to the professional. Can you give some more inputs for the pet owners also who keep saying that okay, my dog is a therapy dog for me?
So, like I said, even for trained therapy dogs, they are only one part of the healthcare process. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
expect them, and it is actually very unfair to the dog to put all the expectations of you feeling better on the dog. It does affect
Mm-hmm.
the dog, as we spoke about earlier. Your dog can pick up on it and be affected by it. So it's very
Yeah.
important, actually, that for your own safety, for your dog's safety, that you do reach out to
Mm-hmm.
professionals. And I'm happy to share some
Yeah.
free helpline numbers at the end of this call. But
Yeah.
more importantly, it can have a long-term stress on your dog. And
Uh-huh.
trained therapy dogs, that's why they are always handled by trained handlers who know how to pick up on signs of stress. Because
Mm-hmm.
if the dog undergoes chronic stress while it's working in therapy, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it may not be able to perform therapy then in a
Yeah.
longer term basis, and things may go terribly wrong. Of course, I'm not even referring here to the sorts of moral and ethical issues that come with overburdening a dog while they're
Yeah.
working. But even for
Yeah.
pet dogs, it's very important that you have other outlets and not be fully dependent on them for everything. And for trainers, even more so, because we live,
Uh-huh.
work, eat, breathe dogs. So it's very
Yeah.
important to do other activities.
Other activity. Okay. So before we move further, we ahead, there is a question coming from Sabah Kohli. The question is: access to mental health services is a privilege in a sense because of the expense. The middle and upper classes are able to afford it, as well as afford therapy animals. Can go horse riding, have a therapy dog, etc. How do we make mental health and additional therapist like animal therapy more accessible?
Okay, so this is a harder question, and I think it's also a system question. Even basic therapies are now very hard to come by.
Yeah.
Uh, in mental health itself, in the field of mental health, we have what is
Mm-hmm.
called community mental health, where people who live within communities are trained in a basic form of mental health, and they live and share their expertise in their communities. So, for example, one of MHI's biggest projects is in the Mehsana district of Gujarat, where we cover 500 villages. And each of
Mm-hmm.
these 500 villages has a mental health champion that has been trained to do a basic
Wow.
level of mental health work.
Wow.
That person is able to give some basic forms of counseling, but more importantly, is able to provide the linkage then to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So, if
Yeah.
I have to now look at dogs in that sense, for example, even though this is not formal therapy, there is an
Mm-hmm.
organization called Banyan, the Banyan in Chennai, and they
Mm-hmm.
work with homeless people who have mental health issues, and their homeless shelter
Mm-hmm.
has a range of what everyone would call stray dogs. When I say stray, I mean indie dogs who now live with them,
Yeah.
and who are very much part and parcel of what the persons who live at the shelter experience in terms of care.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go
Mm-hmm.
to the Banyan site, you'll also see they have a lovely calendar each year profiling all the dogs who live in their shelter, live
Mm-hmm.
alongside the residents who are homeless persons who live with mental health issues. So there are
Yeah.
ways to do it. The other way to do it is if you are maybe someone who cannot afford therapy, but you have access to an animal. And I've done this with
Yeah.
my own therapist
Uh-huh.
for an anxiety issue, where we spoke about how I would handle a particular trigger. It's actually, I
Mm-hmm.
have a fear of cockroaches. Now I can say the word cockroach after many, many sessions. And I always
Okay.
find it very funny that, someone who can work with a Rottweiler, someone who has no problem working with maybe aggressive dogs, I will jump out of my skin and scream if I see a cockroach. Okay, so very
It
funny.
goes for me with the lizard. So
Correct.
I know how it feels.
Yes, but unfortunately for me, my anxiety actually used to make me throw up when I
Oh my
saw a
God.
cockroach.
My
Right?
goodness.
So I actually worked with my therapist and we came up with a few strategies. So the next maybe 50, 60 times I saw a cockroach, I called my dog quickly and I put my
Mm-hmm.
nose into her fur. Now, because my dog
Okay.
smells a certain way, because it's comforting, it actually stopped the physiological reaction, the physical reaction of my
Mm-hmm.
body to throw up. And then after
Mm-hmm.
a certain point, I didn't need the dog anymore. Just that scent memory came up, and I was able to
Mm-hmm.
access it and not throw up. So, if
Mm-hmm.
people have access to an animal, I'm sure that an animal can be used in a supportive way or form. But I'm not so
Mm-hmm.
sure about how we can make animal therapy itself available to the majority of people in India who may not be able to afford it. We are very far from that idea, but hopefully it
Mm-hmm.
will happen one day.
Okay. As a professional also, and also the little bit of curious about knowing the subject more in depth, I always wondered when some in the animal enthusiast or dog enthusiast people say that okay, without even being trained also for that,
Hmm.
that they say that my dog is an amazing therapy dog, and I take my dog to particular sessions, and my dog is amazing with the kids. As soon as the kids are there, or as soon as my clients are there, the dog fast asleep. So that's a wonderful therapy dog. So according to me, if the dog is
Yes.
sleeping throughout the session, that's not a therapy. The dog should be interacting. So can you talk more about it? If I am wrong, or if those volunteers are misguided by some wrong information, that during the session the dog should sleep or go peacefully in his own zone.
Okay. So, first of all, part of what a therapy dog is interaction with the human. That
Yeah.
forms a key facet of what therapy work is. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
had spoken about Nimbu, and I said his role is to sit over there. He is not
Yeah.
lying down. He is not sleeping at all. Right? He may be
Mm-hmm.
engaging. He may be making eye contact with a person once in a while, but his role is to sit over there and be petted, be spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping actually would not certify the dog as a therapy dog because the dog is required to perform
Mm-hmm.
certain activities like going to a school and making children be okay with dogs. That is what we may call an animal assisted activity. Now,
Yeah.
that is not a goal directed therapy. There are no goals at the end. We cannot look at our evaluation list and say, okay, this person was able to talk with the dog, this person walked with the dog. No, there is no
Yeah.
such role. The role is to just expose, to make people laugh, maybe to make people feel happy. It's a
Yeah.
more general thing.
Yeah.
So dogs do animal assisted activities, which falls under therapy dogs, but even those will not involve sleeping. Simply because if you go back to my definition of mental health, I said it is
Uh-huh.
emotional, psychological,
Yeah.
and social. The
Yeah.
social part of it is a large part of what goes on where therapy dog is
Mm-hmm.
concerned. The strength of
Mm-hmm.
the dog is in the interaction, so it cannot be sleeping. A dog cannot
Mm-hmm.
just play a role naturally. I don't care how
Yeah.
friendly the dog is, but
Yeah.
it cannot be called a therapy dog. And I will have to say that I've heard this from too many mental health professionals as well, saying that I
Uh-huh.
have a therapy cat and I have a therapy dog, which is
Uh-huh.
actually not the case at all. You cannot put an animal into a room, and this happened actually in one of
Uh-huh.
the centers that I was training at. They put a cat
Uh-huh.
into the room and said, "This is our therapy cat." And I said, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
let me pick it up, handle it." And they said, "No, no, the cat will scratch, the cat will bite." Now, that is not what
That
a
is not a
therapy
therapy.
cat is.
Uh-huh.
You
I
have to be
also
able
heard
to
a concept.
interact.
Yeah, I also heard a concept of therapy cafe, where you just walk into the cafe, you can order your preferred menu, and then the animals are moving around you, and then you can spend as much as time you want. So how this concept also works, because that doesn't certainly fall under a professional uh, therapy work for sure.
I think
Because people are playing around too much with the word therapy and playing around, it's kind of playing around with the emotions also, human emotions and the doggy emotions. Because those animals, they also need some affection, some interaction, some emotional backup, and the humans also needs it. So the having such places, do you suggest that people should treat these places? There is no harm in going to such places, but do you feel that's a professional approach to
see,
to claim it as a therapy cafe?
first of all, I would wonder about whether you are right in saying that there is no harm in going to these places, simply
Yeah.
because I have seen a couple of these places here in Bombay, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
feel extremely worried for the animals who are there. Who is checking on their well being? Who is
Uh-huh.
checking on whether they are okay about maybe being handled continuously for
Yeah.
6, 7, 8 hours, being watched continuously for 6, 7, 8 hours, being put
Yeah.
under indoor lighting and having that
Yeah.
much attention,
Yeah.
being in public and being around a lot of different people is actually a strain on a dog. You can't expect the dog to do that continuously for 7, 8 hours. So, number
Yeah.
one is I would worry about the well being of the dog. Is the dog getting enough breaks? That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it is definitely not a professional interaction. People are nowadays tending to use the word therapy very loosely. So I will
Yeah.
say that if someone says I went to a therapy cafe, I would say it is the same as saying I went to go to do retail therapy, shopping
Yeah.
therapy. Right? It's actually not a therapy.
I
Uh,
know. I agree
Yes,
completely.
if it is something that makes you feel happy, sure, well and good. But I would say then there are many other ways to do it. If being
Yeah.
around dogs makes you happy, for example, there is a kennel, there is a rescue center called Rescue in Pune that does a fabulous
Yeah.
job. You may be able to volunteer once a week to take dogs for a walk.
Yeah.
So there are other ways to do it, which may
Yeah.
be personally supportive, pleasing, and therapeutic
Yeah.
for you as a person, but it is not therapy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now we move ahead with our next segment. All the while we have been talking about how the dogs are helping to humans by becoming a therapy dog, by becoming a service dog. Now my question to you is how we as a humans are taking care of our pets' mental health. I have seen a lot of questions coming in. It just because of the because it was little off the topic, I didn't answer that. But a lot of people are saying that my dog has mental condition. He's coming suddenly and biting all of us, and suddenly he bites for no reason. Yes, there is a mental condition to the dog, and you can reach out to the a qualified trainer and behaviorist. But now talking about pet dogs. When it comes to pet dogs, the pet dogs are definitely going under a lot of stress on day to day basis, which goes unaddressed, which goes unnoticed also. Every time we just see that, okay, when I was not there, my dog was sleeping all the time. I have come back home now my dog is happy. We can't just go by happy wagging tail all the time. So are we serving our duties? Are we paying required attention to our pets when it comes to our pets mental health care also?
So,
Because we are using our animals extensively, and we are rubbing our emotions, and we are not considering that, okay, this can be too much for the dog, this can be too overwhelming for my dog also.
so I think it's this is a very timely question because a lot of us are actually spending so much more time around our dogs now than we have in
Yeah.
the past,
Yeah.
and I would have to say that because we are spending so much time more now around
Yeah.
our dogs, people are maybe overburdening their dogs either with too much exercise, with too much attention, with too much neediness. I only talk to my dog. I only do this with
Yeah.
my dog.
Yeah.
There are times that your dog may need a break from you. So
Exactly.
it's very, especially right now. But
Yeah.
overall, I would say, in terms of as a habit, it's very important to always keep the mental enrichment of your dog in
Mm-hmm.
mind. If you say things like, I only walk on this one road every day, 3 times a day, it's not very much
Mm-hmm.
fun for your dog. Because how would you like to
Mm-hmm.
go to the gym, use only the treadmill while watching only the same music video and listening only to the same song on repeat every day?
Every
right?
day.
That's
Yeah, we
not
have
going to
a
be
lot of
nice.
people who doesn't like to walk on the jogging track, which becomes monotonous for them. So they prefer
Yes,
to go on the tekdi. They prefer to go on marine
correct.
drive. Some
Right.
people they prefer the gym setup. So
Yes.
it's very important also. And how do you address what are the borderlines, mental health conditions that you will suggest for our pet owners to look for? That okay, now these are the red flags and these are the warning signs your dog is giving. Apart from aggression, because in aggression also, people generally reach out to us only when the dog starts biting, but there is a course of behavior that has already happened over the period, maybe couple of weeks, couple of months. But apart from aggression, what are the red flags that you would like to suggest that our pet parents should consider, that okay, it's time to see the professional?
So I think part of the problem in maybe these red flag type of issues is that often enough the starting point is that
Mm-hmm.
we don't treat our dog like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
The dog plays many roles for us in our life. You can, some people say fur baby, or uh, I don't know what are the other terms, but things
Per
like
kid.
that. Fur kid, yes. So, how much are we expecting from this dog,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
are the expectations or the burden of those expectations fair on your dog?
Yeah.
The moment we put so much burden on them, the moment that we expect them to be like stand-ins for humans, it can cause
Yeah.
a variety of issues. Your dog is not a human, and it's
Mm-hmm.
extremely important to respect the species that it is. It's an
Yeah.
amazing species, so we must respect it. In the same
Yeah.
way, if you know that your dog does not like being hugged, even by you, even as much as you would want to show your love and affection to your dog, show it in a way that the dog consents to, and that in a
Yeah.
way that the dog enjoys. There
Mm-hmm.
has to be an exchange. This is not a one-way relationship. The reason you got the dog, if the dog is your best friend, remember that you are the dog's best friend
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of the issue is expecting too much from the dog. Another
Yeah.
part is possibly not giving the dog enough things to do, enough stimulation. And I would say that giving into the dog very often, if the
Mm-hmm.
dog, whatever the dog asks of you, if the dog wants to be petted, if the dog is barking for attention, if the dog wants to play, if the dog is allowed to do as it pleases, even if it
Yeah.
means getting up and ripping a cushion or eating the food off someone's plate.
Yeah.
All of these are confusing for a dog. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
able to remember it is your job and responsibility as a pet owner to
Yeah.
indicate to your dog what is acceptable behavior, what is not acceptable behavior, and how
Yeah.
best to navigate life in a human
Mm-hmm.
dominated society.
Yeah.
That's your role, and you have to consistently follow it. If you don't, then the dog is just going to get confused, and unfortunately the fault will be in our behavior and not in the dog.
Mm-hmm.
It is a sad thing that the dog unfortunately may have to pay for that
Yeah.
consequence, but we have to remember that in the end it is our job to teach the dog how to navigate this world, and it's a
Yeah.
continuous process. But I would say that any sorts of inappropriate barking, any types of inappropriate destruction, any types of clinginess, all of these are issues that need to be looked at.
Uh-huh.
And if you see any behaviors or any sorts of habits forming. Now, if I have to take the example of a child, if you are a parent and you see a child chewing the nails, you may
Yeah.
instantly, anytime you see the child, you may say no, you may give the child something else to do. You
Yeah.
may further escalate it to put some bitter thing on the child's hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, your dog needs similar work. If you see a
Yeah.
habit forming, what is easier to do is to get in touch with a professional and break that habit. Not when
Mm-hmm.
it's a fully formed habit to teach the dog to unlearn it. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen. Our
Yeah.
role is to teach the dog appropriate behaviors and appropriate life skills in order to
Yeah.
navigate.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and if you confuse your dog, that does affect your dog's mental health setup.
All right. All right. So I guess We have one more question from Mona Lisa Banerjee. For kids with autism and ADHD, sometimes parents will think about getting a dog to help a child. How will you guide such parents? What are some things to consider?
Great. So I actually have done this with families
Mm-hmm.
who have come to me and said, I think that a dog will help my child. In which
Mm-hmm.
case, the first thing that I tend to do is to ask for the healthcare professional who they interact with,
Yeah.
call them up and get a whole history
Yeah.
of the child, what maybe the special needs of the child are, and
Mm-hmm.
then talk to the health professional about if they think a dog or an animal is a good idea, what sort of
Mm-hmm.
goals or what sort of role a dog would play in the child's life. Now, I had a case like this most recently, which I actually helped. And
Yeah.
I spoke to the healthcare professional first. After I spoke to the
Mm-hmm.
healthcare professional, I spoke to the family. I found out uh, how many people are in the household, what sort of work they do. Let's not
Yeah.
forget that
Yeah.
when there is a child with autism or ADHD, that as it is involves more care work from the family. So the family is
Yeah.
already caring a little more
Yeah.
for the child. So one
Yeah.
is the family on its own going to be able to take care of the dog and ensure that all of its needs are met? If that
Yeah.
question is answered to my satisfaction, and it was in this last case because one of the parents
Mm-hmm.
only worked part time, so there was enough time.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
because the dog cannot be left alone with a young child without supervision. I don't care how good the dog is,
Yeah.
even if it's been trained to the highest extent. The
Yeah.
best practice is not to leave the child alone.
Yeah.
Right. So that was number two. Number three is to actually meet the family, meet the child, and watch
Yeah.
the child interact with dogs. I may
Yeah.
say whatever I want. The health professional may say whatever they want. Parents also may
Mm-hmm.
say whatever they want. But to know that the child actually wants to interact, wants to engage, and is not scared of the dog, there is no way to
Yeah.
tell this except to
Yeah.
see. The proof of pudding is in the seeing.
Yeah.
And so typically, what I did is I exposed the child to a variety of dogs to see what the child likes, doesn't like. I had an
Mm-hmm.
idea in my mind for temperament, but I figured out on the basis of how the child interacts as well. The child is an important part of this puzzle, so it's very important to know. You may not be
Mm-hmm.
able to talk to the child in the same way and have a question and answer as we are doing now, but there are ways to
Yeah.
find out through
Yeah.
observation, through other things. And then
Yeah.
finally, once you have all these pieces of information, to look for the appropriate dog. In many
Yeah.
cases, I would say that a puppy is not a good fit at
Mm-hmm.
all. People tend to
Mm-hmm.
have these very romantic ideas of my puppy will grow up alongside my child, and I think it's a terrible idea. It
Yeah.
puts an immense amount of strain on the parents.
Yeah.
The child may actually grow up not to like dogs, especially if there are interactions that a puppy normally will do, such as scratching with nails or nipping,
Yeah.
pulling apart furniture. Then who is
True.
responsible in this case? So I would say that after looking at all of these factors to figure out what temperament, age of the dog, in all likelihood, it will not be a puppy. In fact, I will go
Yeah.
so far as to say that I will not recommend a puppy
Mm-hmm.
because there needs to be a certain amount of stability in temperament
All
for
right.
me to suggest, because a temperament is forming as the puppy grows. So I would not
Yes.
ever suggest a puppy for a child with ADHD or autism. I would suggest an older dog, preferably already
Mm-hmm.
toilet trained and having whatever temperament I have decided after talking to the
Mm-hmm.
healthcare professional, the family, and observing the child around dogs.
Yeah. Now I'm going to take further advantage of you being a mental health professional.
Hmm.
Though this topic and this question was not planned, but I'm asking you directly on on the live session. You being a pet, you being a certified mental health professional, what do you suggest to our pet professionals? Because pet industry is something which has got badly affected during this pandemic. which includes the veterinarians, which includes the trainers, which includes the groomers. The pet shops are also providing the essential services, but still it has affected on a large scale, because we are surviving. There are many pet professionals who are only doing this job only. The kennel owners also, because this particular the summer season is a peak season for us, where people are traveling, so the dogs are also coming for the boarding, so everyone is getting affected. And then there is a pet owners community who, and now everyone is suffering financial conditions, and everyone is asking for discounts. So what do you suggest for all the pet professionals, how to survive, and how to remain peaceful, and how to take care of themselves, while they are providing the service to the pet owners community?
Okay, so luckily for me, I have done so many webinars on mental health in during COVID. So I was very happy when I was asked by DogSpot. Thank you, DogSpot, for doing one on dogs. I've only had to talk about mental health, and I have not
Yeah,
been happy only talking about mental health.
yeah,
But anyways, so I was doing a seminar for entrepreneurs, people who
uh-huh,
own their own businesses on mental health.
uh-huh,
And the thing is that everyone is experiencing actually a severe strain, as you said right
mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah,
One thing is to remember, the most important thing is that it is unprecedented and not in our control. So
yeah,
we cannot take it personally. That's number
yeah,
one. Number two, one of the ways to deal with this on a daily or a weekly basis is to ensure that you have a strong community to fall back on. In the case of entrepreneurs,
yeah,
it was entrepreneurs. For us dog trainers, we do have a community. How do we
yeah,
work together?
yeah,
Maybe in piecemeal as lockdown eases up, doing
yeah,
work only in our area or doing work with a limited set of clients, keeping social distancing in mind, doing this only in outdoor spaces.
uh-huh,
How do we figure this out? It's through community. Let's learn
yeah,
from each other in this phase and see how people are using their thoughts, their creativity to look at
yeah,
keeping themselves, their
yeah,
clients, and the dog safe during COVID,
yeah,
right? I also find that personally for me, I think community is a great source of mental health support. So you should not only be looking at your dogs for mental health support, but also the community. And of course,
mm-hmm.
everyone is going through a financial strain. A lot of
Yeah,
work is being shifted to online. And I know that in community forums, we have been talking about discounts online and such. But
yeah,
please remember that you are professionals who have put in a lot of hard work. This is not as simple as just talking on the phone or
yeah,
talking online. We are
yeah,
using all the resources of our experience, of our
yeah,
training, right? So we cannot take that for granted. Do not play it down.
yes,
More recently in mental health, there has been a phenomena that has been observed and written about, and it's called
mm-hmm.
Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
No, I'm
before
very
going
serious.
Before going live, I was just talking to Saloni that if she is also facing sudden headache, because our screen time, online time has increased on a drastic level, that people are complaining. Even I am also complaining that I have a persistent headache throughout the day, and that which is abnormal. We can't just ignore that. Okay, this is because of I'm watching mobile, I'm watching my laptop more often than usual.
Yes, exactly. So it is hard work. It's hard work in different ways.
Yeah,
What I do think that we can do as a community to deal with this stress is to figure out the ethics of this, to figure out together, to figure out whether it's okay to charge certain sums, to figure out how to work with clients over this
yeah,
online medium, or maybe in a park or in an open space, so that everyone is safe. And those are things that
yeah,
we can do as a community and be there for each other. This situation is not going away anytime soon, as we all know. So it's
yeah,
very important to, I think, rely on community. Of course, we have our animals, but don't forget that social interaction is key. It is going to be key further. And you are
yeah,
still a professional, be it on Zoom or not. Zoom
yeah.
takes, or video conferencing takes a certain amount of skill, a certain amount of innovation. So just because people are suffering, and yes, we all will make allowances for people suffering, but you cannot downplay your work.
Yeah.
You have to respect yourself as a professional. You are
Yeah.
providing a professional service, and let's not ever lose sight of that fact. It'll keep us as strong and as good in our work when we remind ourselves that this is professional and you have a certain level to live up to.
Yeah. Before we conclude, I really would like to thank you for coming up on this platform and giving us such an commendable inputs and insights about how everyone has to look after their mental health care. I would also like to thank DogSpot for creating such a great opportunity for the pet professionals, for pet owners, and for pet enthusiasts also, who can come and interact and can watch live sessions across the country, even on national and international level. And DogSpot has definitely created a big fat family during this lockdown. I really appreciate their efforts. So once again, thank you so much. I would like to say the viewers also, if you have any further questions about therapy sessions, about therapy dog, if you're interested in getting more information about how you can get your dog trained for that purpose, you can always reach out to Raj Mariwala for the same. If you have any further questions about dog behavior, dog training, you can reach out to your local trainers also. You can reach out to us anytime. Once again, thank you so much, Rajvi, for coming and giving us such a wonderful session.
I want to say thank you, DogSpot. Thank you so much, Meera. It's always. I think I always feel happy looking at your smile.
Thank
So
you.
so it's
Thank you.
great that DogSpot is doing this, and I would really I saw some of the other videos, and I'm so pleased that there is more and more discourse like this that connects all the stakeholders and everyone who loves pets in such a wonderful way. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you liked our session. You can always put your comments post session also. We will try and answer each and every question and every comment. Thank you so much, Rajvi.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Meera.
you so
Thanks,
much, Dr.
DogSpot.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.